You know, it's really starting to set in that this is going to be a rough ride for the next few months, few years. Not entirely sure yet, honestly. The economy's in rough shape, and it's in rougher shape elsewhere in the world. This is not a U.S. recession. This is a global recession, and I don't know who's escaping it. I mean, I guess you could say that maybe the Chinese and the Ruskies, the anti-Western bloc are somewhat isolated from this, but I mean, they're still having a lot of problems themselves. I don't know if they will be better or worse. They're certainly different at this point. We are moving into having different economic blocs. Certainly, I think that globalism has peaked in the economic sense, in that having a globally intertwined economy, I think we're going to start moving in the opposite direction. So this is probably, as far as that's concerned, as good as it gets. And so globally synchronized growth is quickly turning into globally synchronized malaise and globally synchronized contractions. The euro is plummeted all the way down to $1. It's dipped a couple of times below $1, which is, pretty hard to imagine for most people. The euro in my lifetime, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm older than the euro, but for the most part, in the time that since I've known what an exchange rate was, I believe it or not, I wasn't, I didn't come out of the womb monitoring exchange rates. There was a couple of years early on where I didn't know, that there was such a thing as a euro. But in my memory, in most people's memory, the euro's always been worth a dollar and change. $1.50, $1.25, somewhere around there. Now the euro is worth $1, which I guess is nice if you're planning a trip to Europe, but frankly, considering how bad things are getting in Europe, you might not want to go anyway, even if the exchange rate benefits you. The prices of everything there, because of the stupidity of European governments, it's probably going to still be really, really expensive to travel there. And plus, you've got the specter of nuclear war hovering over your head, thanks to the Lithuanians in large part. You've got this, this war in Ukraine. Who knows? You could be drafted by the Eurocrats. They could just order one day, okay, everybody has to go join the Ukrainian Foreign Legion and go fight and die, even if you're a foreigner. You could get kidnapped off the streets by some Banderites, in the streets of Munich and sent to the front lines in Donetsk. But then back here at home in America, car loans are being repoed left and right because everybody went out and bought a brand new car with their PPP loans apparently back in 2020. And now, shocker, shocker, without all of the stimulus money, the stimmies that were pissed away into the economy, which helped kick off this wild inflation. Without those stimmies, all of a sudden people can't make their car payment. And do you think that it's just going to be cars that end up getting repoed? Do you think that back in 2020 and 2021, when people were just buying everything in a frenzy, do you think that it was just cars that they bought too much of? Or do you think that perhaps they bought too expensive of a house too? After all, we did see a massive surge in housing prices, just like we saw in car prices, even though housing prices were historically incredibly expensive to begin with going into 2020. Despite what people want to say, there was already a housing bubble back then. We've been in a housing bubble pretty much since like 2015. Because, as I've said time and time again, back in 2012, 2013, the lowest that the housing market got was just back to normal. And ever since then, it's been back in bubble territory. Used car prices, obviously a big bubble. And what do these two things have in common? What do new cars and in a lot of cases even used cars and houses, what do they have in common? They're both debt financed. And these people went out and borrowed money based on what their income was with their stimmies. And now that the stimmies are over, their income has dropped. And they're not going to be able to make the payments. So I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm going to guess, you know what? It's probably not just the cars that they're going to default on. They're probably going to default on a lot of houses too. And it's sad to say, but, I know people personally who went out and did this stupidity in 2020 and 2021, where they went out and they went to, the new home salesman because they wanted to buy a brand new house because they could. And they said, what's the most I can qualify for? And the new home guy punched some numbers in his calculator, and he said, about $500,000. And they said, sold, I'll take it. People spent the maximum amount that they could qualify for. And so they got these massive house payments. And now their cost of living has gone up. And their income likely is going to be going down. Business is not doing too well right now. A lot of businesses are not doing too well. Where I work, things are pretty slow right now. But that is to be expected. Been anticipating this. But we're going to be okay because we don't have a lot of debt where I work. These other companies, they live on debt. They leverage themselves to the hilt so that they can build up their business as big as possible. But that also makes them much more fragile. These entrepreneurs, a lot of the times, actually most of the time, they're built for the boom. And they like to act as if the boom's always going to be here. And so they gear up their business to run at that speed, at a solid, steady speed. And then guess what? They start seeing taillights in front of them, and they can't slow down. And the result is they end up having to lay off workers. And if they're not nimble enough, that's not enough, and they just end up closing entirely. It's not unheard of. In fact, there are staples of the community. Businesses that have been around for much longer than I've been alive in my area that have gone out of business, not because of the Wu flu back in 2020, not because of pandemic-related economic stress. No, because of the inflation this year. That's taken them out because they couldn't adjust. They didn't know how to adjust the price of their inputs to the prices of their products. They didn't know how to keep people on staff when nobody wanted to work. They didn't know, the numbers didn't work anymore. Our unit of account, the dollar, has become much less useful as a unit of account in the economy. People are no longer able to figure ahead of time what their labor costs are going to be, what their material costs are going to be, that sorts of things, because it's just not stable. And what's the result of that? When businesses go out of business, employees lose their jobs. They lose their incomes. But they still have to meet their payments. They've still got their rent. They've still got their all of their subscriptions that they want to have to their Netflix and their Hulu and all these things. They've still got their car payment, their mortgage payment if they own a house. And this is how the crash happens. This is what we're witnessing right now. People who are trying to sell their house right now, you talk to them, it's not like it was a month or two ago. A couple months ago, you put a house on the market, within the first 3 days, you got 5 cash offers above list price. That ain't the case these days in these hot markets. Now you're sitting a couple of weeks, and you're probably willing to accept somebody who needs to finance their purchase. Which, by the way, is never as attractive of an offer as a cash offer, because cash offers are easy. People, they've either got the money or they don't. If they got the money and they say, hey, I'm going to pay it to you, all you have to do is wire the money from their bank to your bank, you got your money. When it comes to financing, you got to have appraisers come by for the bank to make sure that the house, is worth what you're asking for it, so that the bank knows that they have enough collateral to loan the money to this person. It takes longer and it's a headache. But people are willing to deal with it now, and historically, that's what people had to deal with, because you didn't have investors buying up every single house. Historically, people did have to get a loan because they were actually going to live in it themselves. They weren't a bunch of rich people running around looking for a vacation home or to invest in 20 rental properties. And so that is a good sign that investors are dropping in. We want there to be, homeowners who are the ones looking to buy homes. That's a more healthy market. But when you see with the natural demand of those people, especially with the higher interest rates now, people are going to qualify already. They're qualifying for a lot less money than they used to. You can't borrow as much money when interest rates double. You can borrow less, and so that means that you can't offer as much. You're going to offer less. Everybody is going to be offering less money for these houses. And so that means that if the price of your house stays the same, you're just going to have less offers. There's going to be less people who can afford your house. And so that means either you wait longer and you hope a buyer comes around eventually, or maybe they never do come around. Maybe you never get any offers, in which case you're going to have to cut your prices. You're going to have to cut your asking price for your home. And that's what's happening now with cars. Cars are defaulting. Used cars are going to pile up on the market. That's a good thing. Cash for clunkers destroyed the used car market. And hopefully this will do the opposite. Not that the used car market's been broken since cash for clunkers. It did recover after that, but then it was destroyed again by all of this nonsense. Hopefully this will replenish the used car market. But who knows? I mean, we still do have the supply issues of trying to build new cars. But frankly, I think it's disgusting how much people buy new cars. I just think it's decadent. I mean, there's no reason why a car can't last 30 years. Being driven every day. They're perfectly capable. It's just that's not the way that our economy works. Our economy is, built on things being disposable. So people throw their cars away after a couple of years. And nowadays they're designed for you to do that. And yet people claim, the environment, I'm going to buy a Tesla because it's better for the environment. It's like, what would be better for the environment is if you didn't throw away your car that you had just bought 4 years ago. If everybody kept the same car on the road, we wouldn't have to build as many cars. We would need to dig up so many resources out of the ground. And the resources you have to dig up out of the ground to build a Tesla, a lot more scarce, a lot more intensive, a lot more damaging to the planet than the iron that you have to dig up out of the ground to build a normal car. I'm not going to make this another anti-Tesla rant, so don't worry. But all these things, they're connected. They concern each other. And I think that our future, hopefully, will look more like Sri Lanka. Because Sri Lanka was the tip of the spear. They tried all this crap first. And it ended in disaster. I hope that we don't get that far. But I at least know that we're not going to be able to they're not going to be able to sustain that dystopia. I hope that this crash is enough to wake up the world, at least the Western world, the ones who are pushing all this crap, and help us turn over a new leaf. Help us go back to normal. Back to, like late 19th century industrialization. That kind of economy. An economy which saw massive deflation, which saw the decimation of costs of living. Because that was a period in which entrepreneurs and investors were focused on trying to create products or mine products that people wanted to buy and that people needed. And competition being what it was, they bid down each other's prices. It was the era of unfettered laissez-faire in the Western world. And it led to the greatest prosperity and peace that had ever been seen. All that ended with World War I, but we could have an era like that again. There's no reason why the cost of living should go up every year. The opposite should be true. That's the natural order of things. That's what's so infuriating about all this, is that it doesn't have to be this way. In fact, it's very unnatural that people keep getting poorer and poorer, and that life is getting more and more difficult, even as we have, really more, we should have more and more abundance. It's all being stifled by our elites, who are trying to just turn the world into a funhouse mirror show, a freak show. We're a world, and by world I mean the Western world, that is dominated by the most unserious people on the planet. Inbred descendants of European nobles, self-righteous and sexually deviant bankers, every single one of which deserve to lose their power. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.